system works, don't you?
No, I've got a clue.
Right. When somebody comes up on the screen, right, and it says David wants to join or Fred wants to join, right, I'll make a couple of you, right, co-hosts, right? So it'll give you a bit of control to add them in, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's officially, this is the earliest time we've started ever for a long time. It's 7:25, and we're going to ask if there's if anyone's got any news this week. Roger, have you got any news this week, Rog?
No.
Oh, just like that, Rog. No. Just like that. No, that was yeah, that's good. Just like that. Right, Drina.
The defence people with Nightingale, Operation Nightingale, found some Iron Age things in, I think it was Anglesey, and it's been declared as a national treasure. So that's going
to be protected.
It's something to do with the Air Force, around that area.
RAF.
Yeah, that one.
I know. Actually, there's. I went to look on you now, right? And do you know what I fancy doing is a massive coin hoard was found in Jersey, right? So, and this was in 2020. I was going to do my coin hoard stuff the last bit tonight, right? But unfortunately, I've mislaid the book. Right, so I thought I was going to do a load of other things anyway tonight, but to keep that theme going, once we've done our little bit, right, it'll then nicely when the others join us, they'll jump into this story. Right, Margaret, Margaret, you were mentioning earlier on that you haven't had an email, right? Everyone has an email every week. It still goes to the email address that we've got on our system, Tony Poole, right? Because that's the only one that we've got.
No, I gave you my email.
Tony Cruel.
It's
no, Tony's not cruel.
No, I did give you my email.
Yeah, but there was a problem. Right, send me an email again over, and we'll see what we can do.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, send me another one. Right, any news from you, Margaret?
Well, it just came up on my phone. Ooh.
No.
A piece of fossilized vomit.
Oh, yeah, that as well. Do you want to read that out? Because I had that. Somebody was fascinated with that on the Wednesday. They sent me. Can you tell us about this fossilized? Margaret, right? Why don't I get the image up online, right? And you can read out the story, right? That sounds like it. So, what we got? Fossilized
vomit.
Oh, dear God.
Well, it's not as bad as the other one we found. Fossilized diarrhea.
Oh, that'll run well.
Yeah, it was fossilized diarrhea.
Yeah.
But apparently they were related to Chris Rea.
Oh, dear me.
What?
Deary me.
Fossil bear.
Fossil bear.
Fossilized
vomit.
Yeah, that is it. We got right. What? Right, we're going to show a photo. Right, you're going to read the story out, right? And I am going to show people the image of fossilized vomit.
How do you know it's vomit and not a bit of messed up cooking?
There's no carrot in it, is there?
Oh, shut up!
Right.
Right, I'm like, tell us the story. Bloody hell.
A piece of fossilized vomit dating back to the time of the dinosaurs has been discovered in Denmark. The self-declared fossil geek, Peter Bennick, found the fossil at a cliff site in the east of the country. He came across some unusual looking fragments which turned out to be pieces of sea lily, an underwater species related to starfish and sea urchins, in a piece of chalk.
Hang on a minute, stop a minute, stop. Can you just go back a bit?
Yeah.
I'm now lost with the sea. Right, just go back like 2 sentences. Start again.
Well, he came across some unusual looking fragments which turned out to be pieces of sea lily, an underwater species related to starfish and sea urchins, in a piece of chalk. He took the fragments to be examined at the Museum of East Zealand, which confirmed the vomit could be dated to the end of the Cretaceous period, 66 million years ago, a time when dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus and Triceratops, existed. It was a very unusual find, and it helps to explain the relationships in the prehistoric food chain. It tells us something about who was eating who 66 million years ago.
Hang on. I'm still confused how they know it's vomit.
Well, it says during the period, fish and sharks would eat sea lilies, which are hard to digest, meaning they would then regurgitate all the chalk bits.
The calcium bits, you mean?
Well, yeah. This find is a unique glimpse into the everyday situation in the bottom of the Cretaceous Sea during when the dinosaurs lived. And it will significantly improve our understanding of past ecosystems.
I just want to type in there, oldest diarrhea ever found. But
No, it's vomit. It's
no.
Yeah, I know. It's got me thinking about this diarrhea thing. Right.
What day?
And it's the most amazing discovery that's ever been found.
Ever. This is the most important discovery ever in the history of the planet. Yeah.
Yeah,
ever. Oh my God. Whilst I was there, I should have done the bloody Jersey thing, shouldn't I? Oh, never mind. Right, Roger, I don't care about anything you got to say. Just stop interfering with me.
Oh.
Right. Okay, Judith.
No news, but I do have a question.
What?
Well, go on then.
Well, it's not even a recent one, but do you remember months ago you talked about a Roman? It was an old hill fort, and you thought the Romans had either attacked it and killed all the people in it, or it had been used as a training ground. And I just wondered if there was any. Does anybody know what it actually was? Because it was so hard to tell whether which it was, or it could have been a bit of both, couldn't it?
Are we talking? Hang on a minute. So hang on. That's one thing. That's one thing I did. Are you talking about Maiden Castle, the cemetery excavated by Sir Mortimer Wheeler in the 1930s? Yeah. So basically at Maiden Castle. David.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, David. At Maiden Castle. Is the rear entrance. So I've got to get my orientation. So Dorchester there, the south entrance. Sir Mortimer Wheeler excavated in the 1930s what was termed the military burial ground. However, it turned out that there couldn't have been a military burial ground because lots of the people were buried over lots of different times and periods. And it was like a proper cemetery, a cemetery inside the gate inside the entrance of Maiden Castle. And it's interesting you actually mentioned that because in a way it's basically saying that these hill forts, these bank and ditched enclosures, are not military, because if you've got a burial ground directly in the area where the entrance is, right, you start to ask questions about what these things were actually for and what they weren't for. I think that answers your question.
Okay, so we don't know then, because somebody.
Yeah, no, we do know. We do know, because it was not a military burial ground. There was a spine. There was a vertebra. That there was a ballista bolt embedded in in the back of this individual. But that was one of lots of other burials, and usually
it might not have been Maiden Castle. Then I'll have to do some more. It's just you said, have you got any questions, and that popped into my head.
Wasn't it the one in Scotland? Was
I
it the
don't
one?
know. I'll have to dig it out and find out.
I think you are.
Ask the question properly.
Good. Andy, David, I don't know if you had the message. We are starting now at 7.
Oh, God. Right.
Don't worry, David. You
I'm
haven't
not
lost
worried.
anything.
Well, you're 35 minutes late then.
Hey, look, no. Actually, we've been chatting. Roger's been Roger's been showing us some dodgy postcards.
Saucy postcards. Yeah.
Oh, I missed out there. No, I didn't see the message. No.
Oh.
And one of them was addressed to a residence in Grange over Sands.
Mr. Pringle.
Mr. Pringle. Crisps. Anything you want to say, David?
No, thank you.
What about you, Andy?
I'm guessing you probably already mentioned it last week. Those human remains up at Orkney.
No, we didn't. Tell us about it.
They were. I think it was a brock. I can't remember the name of the dig, but it was a brock they were excavating, and they found quite a lot of human remains, as in and bones.
Was it called the Carns?
No, that doesn't ring a bell. Sorry, it was a while ago in my head, but it was astonishing because, of course, they've not really got hardly any human remains from there, have they? In any of the digs, so.
Actually, that's where we're going to. Right, so human remains found on Orkney. Found. So we were going to look at 2 articles of the week anyway. Found on Orkney.
Yeah, it was a dig out. It was a site I hadn't heard the name of before, and I think it was a brock. But
oh right, I'm there's something coming up on my thing now.
Like Roundsey or somewhere. It was one of the smaller islands. But
no, there's an investigation underway that goes with DNS. And this was last week, was it?
No, it would be the week before because I didn't get any news last week at all because I didn't have any internet connection or anything else.
Oh, right.
But,
okay.
Should answer a lot of the questions.
Oh.
Human remains on Orkney. So if we type in archaeology, well, so this is where all the bodies from Orkney were. Yeah, that's where everyone was buried.
They piled them all up in one place. Yeah.
Here we go. One of only 12 passage tombs in Orkney, the rediscovered monument, and uniquely held, well preserved and undisturbed human remains, despite being extensively robbed for stone in the early 1800s. And they found the statue of Lloyd George.
Of course.
So what we're going to do is we'll go directly to that now, if I can, and right, that might be all I've got here, to be honest. Oh, hang on. Oh yeah, there's actually no there's no there's not a single image with this article, so I'll just read her out. Right, It goes to say. Not what I've got. This article, Orkney's archaeology steals the show again. So here we go. Swandrow. Yes, they've been excavating on Swandrow. We have mentioned that before. 3 archaeological excavations in Orkney supported by the council at Swandrow in Rousey, the island of Rousey. Anne's with us. The Blumen tomb in Home. That's Home Island. I've not come across that one. And the Carns on South Ronaldsley. Yeah, we mentioned that earlier on. All 3 projects have received grants from the Orkney Island Council's Archaeological Fund from a total budget of £40,000 per annum, allocated in January each year. Importantly, half of the annual fund is allocated to work in the Outer Isles. The Carns excavation in South Ronaldsley and Blowmere Neolithic Passage grave excavated in Home will feature on Digging for Britain on the 9th of January 2025. Renowned historian and archaeologist Professor Alice Roberts, with her red hair and her leathers, visited Orkney in the summer. The Swansea excavation of Rousey as featured on the much-loved Time Team programme on YouTube. The fantastic image of the cairns on this page is courtesy of dig excavator Martin Carruthers. Not that I can see. They're saying that Orkney Island Council, as a council, we are proud to have supported these excavations over the years and help fund the extraordinary efforts and discoveries involved. And right, so the Broch, we have mentioned the Broch from time to time. I'm trying to find this is the bodies, right? I've moved straight away from the Broch a minute. So the excavation at Bloomere Neolithic Passage Grave on Holme Island, right, involving Cardiff University and the National Museums of Scotland, took place in 2023 and 2024, revealed traces of a substantial cairn over 15 meters in diameter, containing a stone chamber accessed through a 7-meter long passage, one of only 12 passage tombs on Orkney. The rediscovered monument uniquely held well-preserved and undisturbed human remains, despite being extensively robbed for stone in the 1800s. It's hoped modern scientific techniques, including DNA analysis, will reveal much about the life of those placed within the structure, and that's what they're going to be looking at over. That's what Andy was obviously on about, right?
Yep. Thank you.
So, my pleasure. So the next one we're going to look at now is I do believe I had it a moment ago. Oh right, yes. Do you know what? I like people. I like articles that say this is the biggest thing ever in the history of the world. we just looked at dinosaur vomit, Andy.
Oh right. Not come across that.
There's fossilized dinosaur vomit that's been found. Right. Anyway, we looked at that a moment ago. Roger was fascinated. You know, we're going to have these classes. Oh, there it is. There's a fossilized vomit.
Oh.
Excellent.
Margaret,
are those carrots on the left there?
We've had that joke, Andy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just carry on then.
Margaret, in one sentence, what are we looking at?
It's 66 million year old dinosaur vomit found in Denmark.
How do they know that?
Yeah, that's right.
They do, yeah, because it was found in Denmark, Andy. That's how they knew it.
It's been examined at the Museum of East Zealand.
Yeah, exactly.
Where they have experts on dinosaur vomit.
Sure.
Yeah. Can you imagine having a relationship with somebody and saying, actually, yeah, I'm an expert in dinosaur vomit?
Or go down the job centre. What can you do? I'm an expert in dinosaur vomit. Right. Well, there's a lot of jobs in that, isn't there? So.
Yeah, this is even better, right? Roger's chat up line is, do you want to see my saucy postcard collection?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know where you're going with that one.
No, you don't.
Do you want to see my dinosaur vomit? It doesn't really work, does it? You know, it might work on perhaps one or two people, but it's very limiting.
Well, I don't know what you're saying, Andy.
Yeah, I'd go and look at it. You're right.
It would be an ideal chat-up line for Claire, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'd love to know how they identified it.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. Yeah. Now this, I was actually there was some kind of coin hoard that was in the media today, but I don't know where it's gone. But this is basically this dates back to 2020. And this is a coin hoard from Jersey. And two men who found a huge hoard of pre-Christian coins in a field in Jersey have been recognized as record setters, right? By the way, it's snowing, yeah. And look at that.
Wow. That's a lot of coins.
That's a lot of coins. Now Andy, right? To the nearest coin, right? How many coins are there, Andy?
About 546.
Go on, Gina. How many?
570.
Margaret, I'll give you a clue. 69,347. How many's there, Margaret?
God, that's incredible.
How much did you say? 6,000.
No,
God,
you're
that's blown it.
not very good at this, are you?
You're kidding. 69,000.
Yeah. Oh, actually, you're not, Margaret. If you say 69,347, you'll have nailed it.
Oh, yeah, that's just what I was going to say.
Oh,
Well, you haven't said it, have you? Right. Okay.
Lead the horse to water.
Oh, for God's sake. She bloody drowned then, didn't she? Right, so you go. The coins were discovered by metal detectorists.
yeah, it's useful.
Reg Vine and Richard Mead.
You're
in
kidding.
2000.
Are those their real names?
Mead.
What was their names or what? Or where they were or what they drank or what?
I'm trying to do this story now. The number of coins has been. Can you imagine this, right? Oh, they're all sat down and there's a coroner, right? And one of them says, well, I verified that there's 69,347. And the other one goes, I actually verified there's 69,340. And they got to count them all over again.
Yeah.
How do you know that? They're stuck together.
That's a huge amount.
That's
right.
ridiculous.
That's almost the whole size of Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is massive.
What are the coins? What are they?
Are they all copper?
Copper, you could agree, yeah.
Can you, Rog, can you just let me carry on? Thank
Go
you.
on then.
Thanks. Don't get too excited, guys, right? This is the
the
largest collection of Iron Age coins ever, right?
I'm not kidding.
Mr. Vine and Mr. Mead had been involved the whole way through, and it was lovely receiving the official Guinness World Record certificates. When the hoard was first discovered, its value was estimated at about £10 million.
Wow.
Some of the coins, which were found in the east of the island, are on display in the Lahoo Museum, Jersey. Anyway, the hoard is officially owned by the Crown.
Yeah,
Olga Finch, curator of archaeology for Jersey Heritage, said, "We are not surprised at this achievement and are delighted that such an impressive archaeological item was discovered, excavated, examined and displayed in Jersey." Right. Once again, it puts our island in the spotlight of international research of Iron Age coinage and demonstrates the world-class heritage that Jersey has to offer. Here we go. There's an image. There's Rog there. He's in there trying to break it all up. Is that gold there? Anyway, sure, Rog. The hoard thought to date from about 50 years BC on the 14th of October at 5:15 was discovered at the depth of just over 1 meter. I've got to be honest with you, right?
That's quite deep.
Somebody's metal detecting, right? And then digging 1 meter down with a foxy little trowel.
That's a long way down, yeah.
Well,
maybe they found the
hoard type of detectors that'll pick up big lumps.
It's maybe they picked up some nearer the surface first, and then got the archaeologists dug down. But
Mr. Vine said it had taken 30 years to locate the coins. So he knew it was there. He had a map, an Iron Age map with an X on it.
Yeah.
Hang on. Listen to this. After receiving a tip-off in the 1980s from a woman who said she had spotted something that looked like silver buttons in a field. The hoard is officially owned by the Crown, he added. Prior to the discovery, the largest hoard found in the British Isles was the Canito hoard, which was unearthed in Wiltshire in 1978. It contained 54,951 low-value copper coins manufactured. Hang on a minute. Manufactured around the 200 years BC. That would make it some of the earliest coins that have been found. So I thought I'd put that in there, right? I thought I'd put that in there, right?
It's
Andy,
been a tax haven then, hasn't it? So
Must be a money makers.
yeah, that's really interesting. And that must be more than most of the museums put together as well.
Must be.
the thing is, right? I'll tell you off. We'll type in this one. You know, we were supposed to be doing the last part of our coins today, right? Unfortunately, I've mislaid the book, so we'll just continue doing that next week. So we're answering a couple of questions this week. The Canito hoard, right? So we'll have a quick look at that one, right? There we go. The Canito hoard. Just straight onto Wikipedia. Is there an image? No, there's not. Right. Okay. Go to there. And it was found. The Canito hoard was found in there. That thing there.
Oh,
There's a load of them there. Hang on a minute. This don't make sense. I got to read this out for you folks. Anyway, the Canito hoard of 54,951 coins was discovered at the site of the Roman town at Canitio in 1978. The coins were deposited at the British Museum, and the pottery vessel in which they were sealed was put on display at Wiltshire Museum in Devizes. The largest hoard from Roman Britain, the Canitio. It's not from. Ah, right. Hang on a minute, right? This article's wrong, right? Because it says it contained 54,951 low-value copper coins manufactured in the 200 years BC, right? This is the same thing. It actually dates from AD 274.
So which is
No, the point is, I'm glad we've got the origin of that, because if it would mean if we had coins in Britain, Iron Age coins manufactured in Britain, or a large amount of Iron Age coins before 200 years BC, that would mean that we were making coins that period, which we're clearly not, because the article was wrong.
ah.
So in other words, these were actually Roman coins rather than Iron Age coins, which I'm glad. I'm glad we've sorted that one out. So seeing as we're not doing Roman stuff, the Canitio hoard was actually a Roman hoard rather than an Iron Age hoard. And so sometimes when you get articles written like this, you need to check out the facts just in case, because I thought that was very, very odd. Right. So let's just let's go where we want to go. And just got to make sure that we've got that. Right. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go to stop that sharing. And we're going to go to. Roger thought I was in my mum's house because there's a. Why would I be in my mum's house, Roger?
It's all the stuff on the walls. Your other place is just a plain old wall and a big old shed. But there you've got all sorts of things, as if it's looks quite nice.
You're saying it looks feminine?
No, it's just tidy for change.
Oh, right.
No, it's
that's
feminine.
so sexist.
Something a bit more, interesting and colourful. Put it that way. No implied. It's just thrown a few things on the wall. Carl, what?
No.
What?
Yeah, well, he was being really sexist, wasn't he? So he deserves this.
No, it's just the way it is. It's nothing sexist.
Right. Okay. Are you ready, Rod?
I'm ready.
I don't know how your woman puts up with you, Rod.
I'm right.
Does she ever complain about your weird ways?
You complain about my weird ways, Gerald? No. Thinks I'm wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up.
Right.
Right. Okay. I had a question, guys. Right, and the question was,
what?
Right. When we were going through a list of, we want to look at this and that, right? So, I think the best way of doing this is to sort of give you a little bit of an overview and then try to lead into answering the question. So the question was there hierarchy in the British Iron Age? Now, on the surface, with what you guys may have been taught at school, the answer is yes. But what do we define by hierarchy? So obviously we've got the Musa Broch on Shetland, and when you usually trying to answer a question like this, you go to a place like Scotland or Orkney or Shetland, because there's lots of really impressive archaeology surviving from the Iron Age. And it's surviving from the Iron Age just because it's not as densely populated as southern England. So, but again, when we're talking about hierarchy in Britain and we're trying to understand what that means, we've got to look at there's different bits of Britain that would have acted differently. For example, in Scotland, their Iron Age lasted way into the AD 400s, when in fact the Iron Age in Kent ended in the summer of AD 43, with the Roman era taking over Britain. And the problem again, using a term like Iron Age, is trying to fit everything into a nice category. And as we've seen with coins, and we've all argued the same way, that lots of coins that were produced in the Iron Age in Britain were as good, if not in one or two ways superior to the Roman stuff, which was being produced in Imperial Rome after the days of Julius Caesar, which would have begun about 30 years BC. So that's a really interesting point. So again, when you're trying to think about the Iron Age and what hierarchy is about, you might think that technology is something that develops a sense of hierarchy. Other people would argue, for example, in Scandinavia, that the hierarchy of society is led by women. In Britain, when we look at figures like Boudica, you might also say that women are dominant in a hierarchical structure of Iron Age Britain. Also, if you look at one or two Roman writers, on a hierarchy level, women had the right to choose their sexual partners, rather than in ancient Rome, the males chose their sexual partners. So how do you define hierarchy? So, and what does hierarchy exactly mean? So what we might think about hierarchy is how the landscape is organized and who is in charge. Now, if we go down the avenue of saying, women are ruling the roost and men are ruling in the roost, we're not really going to get much of an answer. So I think the specific question was there hierarchy in the British Iron Age? And again, answering that question is making an impression. So if you're going to make an impression, right, you're going to build impressive structures. And those impressive structures might be, for example, brochs like this one that you can find dotted in the northeastern part of Scotland, i.e. Caithness, and the likes of Orkney and Shetland. So is this answering the question of hierarchy? So the Iron Age architecture was designed to make an impact. In the south, for example, our various hill forts in the south and banked and ditched enclosures, they are impressive undertakings. Now, were these things developed at any one point in time, or were they a thing that developed over time? And usually when we think about how prehistory is developing, It's something that's developing over a long period of time. So there's no one sense of one person directing the prehistoric world. And you could equally say that when you think about Stonehenge, nobody ever sat down on a Wednesday afternoon and had a discussion that Stonehenge would turn out the way it has today. And the same thing that you could say with Silbury Hill, and the same thing you could say with Iron Age Maiden Castle. Nobody ever sat down and envisaged these things. So the Brocks, these tall dry stone towers, and we mentioned the building, the Carnes on South Ronaldsley, which was being funded by Orkney County Council. That's a very important Brock, and we've mentioned that from time to time. The massive dry stone buildings like the Duns, really big, thick-walled things that are a bit shorter and squatter than these. Or we can actually say that a crannog like this, the crannog on Loch Tay, this itself is a structure built in and around lochs and wetlands, whether on natural or artificial islands or raised up on stilts. Now, again, answering this thing, was there hierarchy in the British Iron Age? And what is the sense of hierarchy them and us as it is today? I.e., you could say Keir Starmer getting fat in 10 Downing Street and the King versus us. Is that what hierarchy is to you? What is that how hierarchy was in the past? And you've got to be very careful when you think about what hierarchy is, because there are small numbers of people about in the Iron Age. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care whatever book you lift up and you start reading, right? If you've got a population spread over Britain of 1.5 million people at the time of the Roman invasion in AD 43, right? That's very, very few people. And they say that the population of Britain beyond about 2033 or whatever it is going to get to 72 million. You know, I'm living where I am in Wales, and other than Michelle, I haven't seen a single other human being all day, right? And I could walk down the road now and not see anybody for mile after mile after mile, and that's with a population in Britain of about 68 million people today, right? So having a population back in the day of 1.5 million people, back 2,000 years ago, is a very small number of people when it's spread all the way across Britain. And when you talk about hierarchy, if you've got one person in the village and their family out of 150 people, right, their sense of opulence is very different than the sense of opulence of our aristocrats today, for example. They're not the big bankers or Elon Musk of today that we had in the past. They're people with a little bit more than everybody else. That's hierarchy. So while we think that the why we're thinking of all these wonderful things like hill forts and cranogs and brocks and so on as things that might echo a sense of control or hierarchy, it's on a different level. And maybe a way to explain that is to say that people were complicit in the sense of hierarchy. For example, if you've got a very small community and there's only 50 people living in it, right? And you've got one family of 5 people, right? That you're all sort of, you know, those people over there are special. That actually that person who lives over there, they can make iron, right? Maybe you might bring them a little bit more food. Maybe their roof is a little bit better than the rest of us. But it wouldn't take much for that hierarchy to be replaced. So whereas today's hierarchy is secure, You know, there's not going to be an open rebellion next week to get rid of the political structure in Britain, and there's not going to be an open rebellion next week to get rid of the aristocracy. But if you've got a small number of people, then the sense of hierarchy is by being chosen to be in control of the village, rather than having a silver spoon in your mouth. And I've got to be very careful to not sound like a communist now, and I've got to be very careful to sound, you know, to step away from it being a political diatribe of information that I'm talking to you about now. But what I'm trying to get at is a comparison of trying to say what aristocracy and hierarchy is about. And again, what is hierarchy? So you're talking about people, people who are out in the fields, people who are then making things, people who might be making things better than you, right? And somebody might live in a little bit of a bigger house than you. That's hierarchy in the Iron Age. Most buildings in prehistory were circular in plan. The round, well, you've just seen three examples. You've the Crannog, the Brock, for example, a normal everyday house, right? Most buildings in prehistory were circular in plan, and the roundhouse was the standard building of the day. And again, somebody who was a little bit in more control than everyone else, for example, their house might be a little bit bigger. That's all. So these structures, when you're thinking about these structures, could be used as domestic homes, industrial workshops, or farm buildings. Most had a single doorway and a central hearth, which formed the focus of the home. It was where people cooked, gathered, stayed warm. The internal space may have been divided with woven wattle panels or screens to create activity zones. And we see that actually in the archaeology, in the archaeological record, in the organization of people's homes, for example. So hierarchy, and thinking about, again, about social structure and how this comes across. So generally, those who built and lived in Iron Age forts may have exerted some control over the people who lived in smaller settlements below. Or is that completely wrong? When I've shown you, and we've looked at, for example, hill forts, saying, yeah, let's just set the scene of. Let's go off this a minute, and let's just set the scene and just find. Just type in Maiden Castle. That's got to be the most famous hill fort that we've got in Britain. Bank-and-Ditched enclosure, Maiden Castle, right? And if this is going to jog any minds, right? And we think, okay, which one are we going to go with there? That is Maiden Castle, and again, what we see with something like Maiden Castle in Dorset. And later on, we were talking about Roman place names. Dorchester is basically modern day Dorchester, and the Roman name was Duronium, I think, and Dorchester itself replaced Maiden Castle, right? So whoever Maiden Castle could not be built by one family, right? And it could not be built by one family in a week. This is a site that was being built over 3, 4, 5, actually thousands of years, because we've got causewayed enclosure stuff, right? So everyone was taking part in building this, so they're complicit in creating any form of aristocracy or hierarchy. These sites themselves would dominate the landscape. Look, they do, all of them, all 5,000 of them across Britain. And we haven't mentioned hill forts, even though we're doing the Iron Age for quite a few weeks now. But these sites emulate the people, not one individual. They emulate society. They emulate societal structure. in the Iron Age. They were perhaps, this site was perhaps established, and then eventually you would offer fealty to what your family had assisted to create, right? And in many ways, you could say that that's a little bit like modern society, that we, all of us pay taxes. You know, I get very resentful when I'm doing acting work and I pay a massive amount of taxes, but those are massive amount of taxes are used to pay for the police and the roads and security, and peace and civilization and services that we have all around us, right? By the taxes that I'm paying and you guys are paying, you're paying into the system. And in a way, that's nothing different in the Iron Age. You've all been obliged to do this. This great, big, huge Maiden Castle, this site that spans over 50 acres. It's huge. The top of Maiden Castle takes you 10 minutes to walk. It's 1 kilometer. The top rampart is 1 kilometer. It takes you 10 minutes to walk it, right? It is phenomenal, right? And then the point is after your family has been involved in creating this generation after generation, eventually you might start to think that there is some hierarchy being created by people who happen to be there at the right time. You know what I'm talking about. They were lucky to be the family that eventually got to live here or got to control you, right? But there is also something that you would expect back in return, that family that was at the top of the hierarchy. You would be given them some of your wealth that you had created in the valleys around, in the settlements, right? And we're not talking about tens of thousands of people supporting this site, right? You might be surprised to hear it's in the hundreds, right? This one site, because when you think about it, it's an agricultural landscape, and there are 5,000 of hill forts across Britain. Some are only an acre in area, some are 50 acres, right? There's more than one that's 50 acres. Stanwick, for example, is a lot more than 50 acres, more like 200 acres, but up in the north. But the point is, right, the whole point of this is that a small community would have supported this, and then in turn, this would have supported you. This would have offered you protection. This would have been what broadcasted your group of people to everyone else. The thing is, you could say that Iron Age society was tribal on a small scale, but by the time you get to when you a small S or a small T, a small tribal scale, right? And the one thing to be said there is that eventually, we mentioned when we were looking at the coin stuff last week and the week before, Epilus, we mentioned Verica, we mentioned the location of Caliva Atrabatum, and Caliva Atrabatum was the power base of the Atrabati people that would eventually, well, Margaret's little tribe, the Poole tribe, Margaret, right? You're now part of the Langford tribe, right? Next, Roger, you Martins over there. There's 20 of you, right? You're now part of the Langford gang, right? Because the Langford gang is now going to offer you a little bit more than you had before, right? Our hill fort, Roger, is bigger than yours, and you're now signed into my tribal group. This is how things would develop, and eventually from small groups of people who had their own hill fort, which were 150 odd people, 200 people supporting each hill fort, then that would be a gang of 10,000 people and 15,000 people, and these are big tribes with big T, like the Briganti, like the Trinovanti, like the Iceni, like the Atrabati, like the Regni, like the Cantai, like the Jurachigi people, right? All of these would be now big tribal people. Now, however, Iron Age life did not evolve around warfare. It couldn't. Now, this is one where I depart as a person teaching in this field, right? Other archaeologists and historians would turn around and say, the Iron Age was about warfare. It lived to go out fighting and fighting and fighting. And I always remind people of the perils of believing that. If you're out killing, you're not going to develop as a society, right? A good example of that is, for example, Libya today. Libyan society has collapsed. Syrian society is still collapsing, and so on, because it's in a warfare footing, right? Sometimes warfare can be useful and good. And this is not the right thing to say, remembering that Holocaust Memorial Day was yesterday, but there was something good that came out of the Second World War, in that countries were able to build out of a period of warfare that caused the deaths of 50 million people. But in the Iron Age, people you couldn't afford to lose those types of numbers. Imagine population of 1.5 million losing 50 million. Yeah, the maths are not there, are they? Do you know what I'm trying to say? So if you're out killing all the time, it's not your society's not going to develop. So me and a few others believe that it's not a society evolved around warfare. While disputes certainly occurred between tribes, and battles and skirmishes took place occasionally as a result, most people's everyday lives would have been taken up by running the home and farm. And actually, that is a really, 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 really good point. Now, and why that is a really good point. And what we're going to do, we're going to go onto a side angle, right, before the break. And we're going to go onto a side angle, and a side angle is entitled "Getting Around." Yes, we're going to look at transport just briefly, and you know, when you think about the everyday person, most everyday person would have not been affected by whoever you felt was in control. For example, I had a £20 banknote given to me today, and the first thing I did was to look at the banknote, and it's the head of our beautiful Queen Elizabeth II on it. Again, brand new banknote, and I thought, where's King Charles, right? And there's a point to be made there, is that whoever's king, whoever's queen over Britain today, it makes little to no difference to my life at all, right? And in a way, that's what Iron Age people were like. It made very little difference to these people's lives. And again, that sense of hierarchy. Now, if we go back to my images that we've got back here, and I just wanted, this is to try to, again, hopefully I've more or less answered this question, as was the hierarchy in the British Iron Age. And I think if it's not a hierarchy in a modern day sense, because when you look at, for example, wheels and transport, Iron Age people relied on both land and water-based modes of transport to get around. There was no road system in place in the Iron Age, so most journeys were carried out either on foot or by water. Now, again, when you go back to our little wheel, for example, this is the Blair Drummond Moss. This is a wheel. Now, this wooden wheel, albeit dating from roughly the Bronze Age, is the type of wheel that may have been in use in the Iron Age. This was found in the 1800s. May have been used in the Iron Age to actually. This was part of a cart, maybe a single axle, two wheels, wooden wheels. A cart, that's the best thing to do, being pulled by oxen. And later on, as you get to the Roman era, horses and ponies. Now, again, when we think about why is this linked to aristocracy, why is this linked to aristocracy, why is this linked to hierarchy, right? It's not the hierarchy that we've got today, because lots of modern examples of hierarchy are control, and you don't want people wandering around much. For example, if you want to control them, if you are that much in control at the top of the hierarchy, at the top of the A-frame, at the top of the table, if you allow people to wander around, you're not going to be able to control them, right? So these are not despots in the Iron Age. That's what we're saying, right? Now, but in the medieval period, things were different. Things were very, very different. And in the medieval period, most of us would have actually belonged to the lord of the manor, right? We had no rights. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. We weren't allowed to move around the landscape. You had to stay put, right? So being free, being able to move around in the Iron Age, again, thinking about sweet tracks in Somerset, thinking about a trackway that was found, for example, in Ireland. This is the Corley track. It says, though very different in character, the sweet track is narrower, while the Corley track is a broad construction, more road-like in its proportions. So again, finding this in Ireland, again, the Corley track, definitely Iron Age dating to 148 BC, and the sweet track again in some data set dating back to 6,000 years ago. But these are all the same type of things. It's the way people are able to move across the landscape, and again, being able to turn up in one village and in another village and going back to that village and then moving around tells you that it was quite a free society. And maybe every village you'd go to, maybe you'd have to knock on the door of the person whose village it was, and then maybe give them a punnet of berries or something. That was what you may had to have done. I don't know. And what we've got where this was actually found in Blair Drummond. There's a trackway at Blair Drummond in Scotland, and this was a trackway that was formed of tree trunks laid lengthways, over which were small branches and then brushwood to form a route, some 3.5 meters wide. And when you think about that, when you think about a trackway that's 3.5 meters wide, which is the modern width of a well, actually, that's wider than normal everyday country. That's quite a wide country lane, to be honest with you. So again, these themselves, this ability to move around is very, very important. And one of the things that does crop up a fair bit is when people talk about chariots, right? I'm going to ask Margaret. I'm going to ask you, right? Chariot. Who went on the back of a chariot, Margaret, in Iron Age Britain?
Boudicca.
So, but Boudicca was at the top of the. She was the leader of a group of people, wasn't she? So she was at the top of the hierarchy, right? You've just said it, right? So the things that maybe we think of as hierarchical, something that is a symbol of power, is the chariot, right? But we're now starting to find that there are lots of chariot burials in the Iron Age. When you find one chariot burial, you start to find more, right? And because in Britain we found, I think the figures at the top of my head now, we've got at least 50 chariot burials in Britain, right? And that's not just for one person. So if we got over 50 chariot burials in Britain, then we've got to think about how many Iron Age burials have we actually found in Britain. So when we think, okay, we've got 50 chariot burials that we're aware of, maybe a hell of a lot more, maybe there's a lot more than that, and then you equate that with every every way a normal person's buried, if there is a normal person and there's like 1,000 of them, then you might think, oh, actually, there's quite a few people, who are classed as important. And maybe this sense of hierarchy is not the same as I've been projecting, right? And the reason it might not be the same as I'm projecting, maybe in a set community, there was more than one person who was given your respect. For example, the person who produces your pots, the miller, the blacksmith, right? The holy man, they're all part of the hierarchy in a village. And when you think about it, if there's 10 people in the village out of 100 people who are deemed special, right? Then that's a lot of hierarchy. That's a lot of people that you can turn to, and that socially that's really interesting, right? Because it's almost as if you're going shopping one day and you go and get your stamps, or you go to the baker. Yes, I'm talking about the Wild West where I live, where we still get all these things, right? But in many ways, we're seeing a sense of all of these things indicating something very different than maybe the interpretation of a brutalizing sense of hierarchy. Now, this itself, in absence of a road system, water-based transport may often have been quicker than travel over land. Rivers, lochs, and the oceans all provided opportunities for travel by boat, whether in lightweight vessels such as coracles or more substantial longboats made from hollowed out tree trunks. And this itself is a coracle that is influenced by those found in Scotland. Now, where do we find coracles, Roger? We also find them in Wales. I think some of the last coracle makers in Great Britain were actually from Wales. But these basically, a coracle is a wooden frame that's got a skin stretched over it, a single paddle, a single board, and then basically a coracle could be what you could carry a coracle on your back, like a tortoise shell. So it's a lightweight boat from wood and animal hide. And these things are absolutely fascinating, as opposed to something like this, which is the Car-Po longboat that dates to 1,000 years BC, typical from the Bronze Age, but also maybe typical from the Iron Age as well. And finally, to get to the end of this, I'm gonna put a line through this now. We've answered the question. I do believe we have. Arts and crafts. Again, this is where I've been leading you. The who was in control of your community were people who were able to create beautiful things. Many Iron Age communities were pretty self-sufficient, and that's another thing. This is again self-sufficiency. Being self-sufficient is everything in the Iron Age, right? Producing their own food and making much of what they needed, from pottery to wooden vessels, bone, antler, tools, and textiles. Archaeologists find evidence of these activities at many Iron Age sites, suggesting that they were everyday skills that most communities maintained through the generations. Again, creating a beautiful cauldron like this. This was also found at Blair Drummond Moss in Scotland as well in the 1800s. So metal working required a more complex skill set, and this is something that I've mentioned before. For example, if you're going to produce metal objects, right? You've got somebody that's supported in that community, somebody who's special, because they're able to make metal objects. I was yes, because of my acting work, I got a counsellor, and I said to this is talking about me. I said to my counsellor on Monday, I said, "Oh, I haven't actually been inspired to write a book for 3 years," right? And she said, "That's because you're busy all the time. That's because you're You're so busy, right? If you didn't have to feed the sheep, if you didn't have to put fencing up, if you didn't have to do this, if you didn't have to do that, you'd be able to be writing books. And that metaphor is exactly the same for the Iron Age, for example, exactly the same. People in the Iron Age couldn't create great things if they were killing each other all the time. People in the Iron Age couldn't create things if they weren't respected. People in the Iron Age wouldn't be able to create things if they weren't given time, and they were given time to do this. So again, they were the hierarchy. So metalworking required a more complex skill set, and while basic blacksmithing might be carried out locally, prestige items would more likely have been produced by specialists. The aesthetics on display in some Iron Age metalwork takes these items firmly into the zone of art rather than necessities. And there's another point to be made there. There's another key point to be made there. If you're creating these things and they're not necessarily practical, it means again that society enjoys what you're doing. Society is prepared to put up with your foibles. They're prepared to put up with you making things that are pretty, right, rather than purely a cloak pin. This is no more than a cloak pin. It says on there, it may once have had a coloured stone glinting in its eye, for example. You can see that there. Maybe there, that thing there, that little thing described as an eye, maybe that's what they're talking about, right? So this is art, right? And rather than, it's practical, but it's also art. So again, sense of hierarchy. Hierarchy is defined by all these things and none of them at the same time. Hierarchy is defined by there's being a sense of excess in the society, right? That's something else I haven't mentioned. In modern day society, we have got excess. We are able to support people, right? We are able to keep people above us because we support them in a society, because that's what we do, right? If, for example, Britain was under attack and we were at war, right, we wouldn't have those excess things. We would all be on a warfare footing. And there's a point to be made with that in the Second World War, for example, all factories that were producing things that were seen as aesthetic were now put over to manufacturing planes, tanks, munitions kits, food rations packs, and all the rest of it, from clay pipe manufacturing companies in Britain in 1939 all the way through to teddy bear manufacturing companies in the Third Reich. All of these things were actually brought over to doing things on a warfare footing. The point I've just made is that to be able to create aesthetic, beautiful things, you're not fighting, and you've got people, you've got access to support these people to create these wonderful things and these beautiful objects. Obviously, that's a practical object, a decorated bowl and cauldron, but a lot of work has gone into this. It could just be a round thing, but it's not. It's really well put together. And again, dress accessories, animalistic designs, and elaborate jewelry made from precious metals tells a broadcasts a sense of power and connection in the Iron Age. This is offering you an international broadcast of our world, of the Iron Age, which is both controlled and not controlled, which is both open and free, which has got a sense of control when it needs to, with all the forts down to the little settlements. Based on the aesthetics of the time, the Iron Age was a period of expression, art, creativity, and absolute garish beauty. So what we're going to do then, the next question that we're going to do after the break is medical practice in the Iron Age. Right, so I'll read out a list when we do that, and there's a little bit of an example of something to answer that as well, so that should be good. And what we're going to do, we'll have we will have a break now, and I think I deserve one. There we go. Right. Okay. Rogie, baby, have you got anything you want to tell us?
No, not at the moment.
I've blown you away. Good. Drina.
No, no questions.
Margaret.
Hello. Of our little tribe here, of us people here, I mean, you're the obvious leader because you're in charge. Who else?
Yeah, but
who else has got the leadership qualities in our little group?
hang on, can I just jump in there just quickly, right?
Yeah.
I'm only in charge because you're saying that I'm in charge. I'm only in charge because you're supporting me. Yeah, you're supporting me to be in charge. So this is what we're saying with the Iron Age, right? This is what I'm saying. That you've just actually made a great example. Say for example, somebody else came along in leathers with red hair. Maybe she would replace me just like that. But she's not about. She's doing other things, and Neil Oliver's not available. But I am replaceable by somebody that you choose to replace me, right? That's the hierarchy that we're talking about in the Iron Age. But if we want to talk about, for example, David's skill set, that would be really useful. Yeah. Andy's skill set, we might need a teacher amongst you, right? And then but this is what we're talking about. There's how many of us? If we want to bring in Ruth as well, who's also a member of our group, and we've also I think that's it now, isn't it? So,
eight of us, including you.
There's 8. There's 9 of us, including me. So basically, this is exactly the hierarchical structure I'm talking about with the Iron Age. It's not just this great leader who lives in a hut. It's not possible to do that. It's just not going to work. It's just okay. If you think about, I just had his name on my tongue there. You think about the Ketsueo, right? The leader of the Zulus in Zululand at the time of 1879. Yeah, he had thousands and thousands of warriors, right? Tens of thousands of warriors to defeat the British Army, right? On not just one occasion, on more than that. And you're just thinking, but we're not talking about tens of thousands of people. We're talking about 100 people, right? And all of those people to support somebody to sit on their backside in the Iron Age to tell you what to do. It's not going to happen. It's really not. It's all of us working together. Some of us don't have the skill set because we don't want the skill set. Okay then, right. I'm gonna approve something. Drina, do you want to teach this class from now on?
No, thank you. Haven't got the knowledge.
But
no,
Drina was a teacher. Drina was a teacher.
Hang on a minute. Stop a minute. I didn't want Drina to say I don't have the knowledge. Drina says, no, thank you, right? Because she chose to say no, thank you. Drina's chosen to listen to me, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about with the Iron Age.
Well, I guess that's saying too many cooks spoil the broth is just as true then as it is now.
Yes. There are people who just sat back and decided, okay, we'll give Andy a go. Now he's better at making metal than me, you know.
Everybody has a different skill set.
Exactly, and the skill set of Drina is to sit and listen, and that's a skill set.
But Drina was a teacher.
I'm aware of that, but the fact of the matter is, Drina doesn't want that role now, and the point is, Drina may have been the one that was in charge of us once, right? But she's not. She doesn't want to be in that role now, and that's her own choice. And this is the society I'm talking about in the Iron Age.
Drina and Anne would have been the wise women, wouldn't they? The wise women of the tribe.
Why didn't you just call them witches and get it out the bloody? Right. Okay then. Thank you for that. Anything from you, David?
No, thank you.
What about you, Judith? Judith
No,
has got something to
nothing.
say.
No, nothing, thank you. I've Googled that place I was thinking of. It wasn't Maiden Castle, it was in Scotland. But
Yeah.
no, it doesn't sound as if anybody knows any more than they did when you gave us
Was
the
it
tour.
Trampaign Law? Trampaign Law?
No, bars. Oh God, I've got it. Hang on, just bear with me.
Oh.
Give it to us now, and I'll write it down, and we'll come to that after the break as well. Go on.
Bird's World, wasn't it? What's it? Bird's Wall.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's Hadrian's
I've
Wall.
got it on my phone. Hang on. It's Burnswick Hill.
Burnswick.
Burns Walk. I wouldn't even know how to pronounce it.
Burns,
It's in
Burns Wall.
Scotland.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in Scotland.
Yeah, in Dumfriesshire. Yeah.
So Birds Walk Hill.
Bird's Wall. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you for that, Judith. I'll have a little look. What about you, Andy?
No, I just think that it's interesting. I was thinking about kind of possibly hierarchies. I can't think of any culture anywhere that doesn't have elders that are given, they're venerated. That's probably the best way. They're not often in control, but always people go to them for advice. So there's a structure
wise women
there.
and wise men.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the wise ones.
Yeah.
But then again, there doesn't need to be evidence of that. I think.
No.
I think those are the ones who are guiding the group, because there are going to be times when things are not going to work. There are going to be times when there's going to be arguments, right?
Common sense, isn't it?
But
common sense to utilize the best people for the best jobs whenever. So
exactly,
different personalities.
Exactly.
You might have to expel one or two. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like John. But may did I say that? I didn't say that. But it's just like I think, one thing I should say, right, is I think Iron Age society worked because it had an equilibrium, and again, if it didn't work, we wouldn't be here today. That's it. If it wasn't a society that could react to overall changes and develop, it just wouldn't have got anywhere. So, for example, I keep saying this, that I don't really think, well, loads of Roman experts would completely disagree with me with this, and it's total blasphemy. But in the long term, I don't really believe the Roman invasion of AD 43 made the massive impact that people say it did, because these things were going to happen anyway, and they were already happening. I'll demonstrate that after the break. And actually, somebody could say, actually, Carl, right? Mary Bearded, that the legacy of the Roman era, when I agree with her, is actually Christianity. But then if you go to Ireland, they weren't influenced by the Romans, and their Christianity was bigger than our Christianity. So you see what I mean there. The Irish didn't need the Romans, and to be honest with you, nor did we.
I think you've got an interesting point where you say that there was kind of an equilibrium. There had to have been a balance, because when you get those periods in our history where you've got that balance and equilibrium, is when we get the creative periods. The so-called Celtic artwork, the Iron Age artwork, they only come out when that is, and that only comes out through peace, and that everyone has to be getting on and doing whatever they're doing, and no dictatorships. They're not going to say you will create art today. It doesn't work that way. So,
and in a way, this is not really completely saying what Andy's just said. But in a way, look at all the innovations that occurred just before the outbreak of the First World War. We had an equilibrium in Europe. We had things that were working finally, right? We had peace, right? And then suddenly we threw it all away. And again, that's exactly the word. That's Andy said, peace. the peaceful world, and suddenly we threw it all away. All our achievements went out of the window, baby and the bathwater and all. And then it took another 20 years to get it all back, and then we have another great war. Great humanity, love it. Right, okay then, Anne, and we're gonna have a break. Yeah, and do you want to say something if you want to, and I'll say something else now.
Well, yes. I read something about this hierarchy thing at a time, and it was saying, and it seems that the Iron Age fits into the time when there weren't quite tribes with leaders with power. Before that time, everybody was working together, and they had. I heard that. I mean, it might be all rubbish, but there was a sort of big man who led, but he led because he was a good leader. He didn't have power like the head of a tribe, the tribe leader does. He didn't have power, so there could still be that equality, or it worked well because they didn't have to do what he said. And people don't like to be told what to do at even today. And I read that situation was there for a time, and that may have been what you were talking about with the Iron Age. And then when it moved on, where they'd got tribes, where they then had hierarchy, leave power to their sons and all that sort of thing, it became very different.
That's when it comes very different. When we start to get to the end of the Iron Age, and we actually start to see the emergence of tin Camaras, and we start to see a pillars that we saw with the coins and stuff. But this was abhorrent to the order of Iron Age Britain. Suddenly you've got these great leaders, and you're thinking, my God, hang on a minute, right? Things have got a little bit out of control now. Who put these people in charge, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm saying is that everything's happening, and then suddenly something changes towards the end of the Iron Age, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it does change, right? But at the same time, Iron Age society would have continued, and there would have, it was going to change. I can't deny that. Things were going to change, but up until those points, up until those little changes with the coins, where actually my name's on a coin. What? I want to be on a coin, right? What gives you the right? But in a way, as we've demonstrated with the coins, there was a little bit of pullback, right? Because you have the moneyer illustrated on these coins. You have the moneyer's name on these coins, right? And it's like, but the leaders on the other side, and you're thinking, right, who produces these coins? It's not the king, it's the moneyer, right? So that harking back to that, where the metal smith is actually the one in charge. You still see that little poking through a little bit, right? But again, things did change, and revolution was on its way. But that's the way it is. But there was, if you look at societies like the Zapotecs and the Olmecs going back around this time, what you do see is that you see equal and organized, almost free societies in a way, and then you've got the emergence eventually of the Maya and the Aztec, and again things change. So now what we're doing, we're looking at that sort of that 50, just before that 50, 100 years before Rome, all of the stuff that we've discussed now. That's what we've done, but things do change, and I'm glad you've raised that. Right, so what I'm going to say now, we will have a 10-minute break. Try, if everyone tries to get you around 7 o'clock next week, it doesn't really matter if you don't get your smack on 7, because we'll have a chat and we'll get things going, right? Because it would be nice that if we could finish just after 9. Tonight we'll go to 9:30 anyway, but we'll see how this goes. We'll see how this goes. So, right. So again, we're aiming to finish at 9:30 tonight. We'll see how it goes. 10-minute break. Go for it. Put the kettle on, David. Everyone else, go, go, go. Roger. Roger hasn't said much today. I haven't insulted him enough, you know? Shame, really.
I did time.
I liked it. I like Andy's jumper. It's good. It makes him look sexy. Right. Okay. 8:50.
And any rescues lately, Andrew?
No.
No.
It's been quiet.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it's been quiet for the last.
Well,
I was away all last week anyway, but it's been fairly quiet.
Well, the weather conditions.
Yeah, and we've
and
had
people take chances.
Pretty wild storms.
Well, that's what you want.
The tide on Friday was 1.5 meters higher than it should have been. And fortunately, with that storm, fortunately, because it was only a very low tide, it was okay. If it had been on a big spring tide, it would have been
murder.
Up onto the road on the promenade and into the shops without a doubt. So,
yes, it gets nasty.
Yeah.
Dangerous. People will still get too close.
Yeah,
to
they
the
go for
water.
those photographs. Yeah.
They're daring, I don't know, challenging the sea or something.
Yeah. King Canute style. Yeah.
Canute,
The daring do.
he showed that he couldn't control the
Yeah.
tides. That was what he was doing.
Yeah.
And he was right. And he can't, it's dangerous. The cruel sea is well named in that novel.
A bit like you, Roger, really cruel.
Don't be silly, Carl.
It'll be very,
Right.
very quickly take you.
So there we are. That no, it can be dangerous, and you get so easily into trouble.
Yeah.
A few friends of mine have had times. And you think,
Is that
well,
the same as getting a woman into trouble, Rog?
that's rude. You said no rudeness, Carl. So
I think that's worse than rude.
except these days, that dates you saying that, because no one plays a hoot.
Does it?
Yes, it does.
What, getting a woman into
Old
trouble?
fashioned.
It's because you live in a round house with your sheep, isn't it? It's in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, you're a man in the wild woods, living up the hills. Go.
Up in the hills.
Yeah, the wild.
Right. Okay. I'm going to try and this next one has just got like a few punchy facts in it, and just some images.
Does it feel different living in a round house?
What?
Does it feel different living in a round house?
Yeah, it does.
In what way?
It's round. No. No. Basically, it's yeah. It's just odd. You don't hear the wind a lot of the time, and you don't hear the rain, and it's like a view all the way around. It's really odd.
Have you had a leak today?
No leaks. Basically, we're moving the sheep back under you. Well, I am in the next couple of days. I'm moving the sheep back under the house.
Under your house?
Yeah. So you'll soon you'll hear 22 sheep making their strange noises in my classes.
What do you do with the sheep as they have lambs? Do you keep every lamb and
yeah. Well, basically,
1,000 soon.
No, basically, we've kept Eden away from the flock, and he's in his own little field, pacing back and forth, wondering why he isn't seeing his family. But he does see his family, but he sees it through the fence. So
no nonsense.
No nonsense. Yeah, we can't have any messing around.
Oh, that sort of thing.
Yeah, all you need, chuck him in with an entire flock. He'll have impregnated a lot in a week.
I know, a week.
Oh my goodness!
You know what these boys are like? Oh.
Yeah. Well, he's as my dad used to say about me, you're well blessed.
Oh.
Right, okay. I shouldn't have said that. Right, okay then.
That's a new one. Oh.
Anyway, this next thing was medical practice in the Iron Age. So I thought, right, okay, let's just try and we'll be looking at these little things and stuff, and we found a burial of a doctor, right, at a place known as Stanway, right, and we mentioned this, right, and it's fascinating actually. However, what I need to do is just mention where we go medically wise in the Iron Age. So why if we get a little image of a house in the background, that'll be better. There we go. There's the doctor's house. Iron Age medical practices included the use of plants, earth, and clay, as well as rudimentary surgery. Now, that could basically mean anything. Plant-based remedies. And obviously, this is based on some stuff that we've excavated, not all. Medicine men or women gathered plant-based remedies such as speedwell, juniper berries. He's eating all my juniper berries. Wild garlic, tansy, and figworth. Seaweeds, for example, they know from the Isle of Skye that dulse, which is a type of seaweed, which is like a purpley type of seaweed, was used to treat headaches, colic, constipation, and worms. Here we go. Rowan tree sap was given to newborns to ward off evil spirits. Here we go. Earth and clay, eating and applying mud, chalk, and other soils to heal wounds and provide nutrition. And the age-old remedy for headaches, Roger. What the hell was...
What was that?
Right.
That was David.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about it, David. It added a bit of excitement.
It's gone down the wrong way.
Sorry about that.
That's
Dave,
okay.
don't worry. It adds
So
it.
it had a turn.
Trepanation, right? Which is basically, as you know, the oldest surgical procedure involving drilling a hole into the skull to treat epilepsy, headaches, head wounds, and more. So if you've got a constant headache, just drill into the skull, right? Other practices, bloodletting, leeches, the belief that sickness was caused by bad blood. Roger knows about that. Animal dung ointments. That we know the ancient Egyptians used animal dung ointments, so obviously we did as well. Smells and charms used by medicine men, also known as witch doctors or shamans. Do you know there was actually a cure in the medieval period for the plague? Basically, you would wear those big long masks with the big hooters on them, and you'd put human excrement in the end of the big long hooter and breathe that in, and apparently that was better breathing that in than it was the putrefying flesh of those rotting.
Lovely.
That says a lot for the fresh air of that time, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Right, guys. The reason why I've got these little charts here, the reason why I've got these little things, right? They're based on Stanway. Anyway, the study, what they did, they did a study. You see, they examined 270 sexed adults and 190 sub-adults. So in other words, sexed adults, we know they were male, female, or dromedary. And 190 sub-adult individuals for evidence of fractures or a surgical practice. And these were bodies that were examined in Dorset during the Iron Age. So they've got a date range of roughly 400 years before the birth of Christ and the noughties AD. In order to understand medical treatment in both in both the Iron Age and then the Roman period, in order to understand medical treatment in both periods and determine the existence to which these practices changed before and after the Romans in Britain. So they basically examined the Iron Age bodies and the Roman bodies. This is what this is about. The treatment during these periods is not well understood, and naturally, we're only starting to learn from these bodies the nature of medicine and diseases and so on. Medical practice. Actually, it was medical practice was a question. Medical practice in the Iron Age. A conservative approach to fracture analysis was employed, which attempted to minimize the influence of fracture type and location and results by excluding bones in which fracture deformities may only be corrected by surgery. So what we're talking about they were quite surgical, right? They were able to maybe deal with fractures in the femur, the leg bone, or the humerus, and they've been examining this. So they've been studying all these human remains, and the study basically they couldn't always look at everything. So the skeletal evidence for surgical treatment was identified looking at funerary evidence in lots of cases, and it's the analysis of lots of these fractures demonstrated that in both the Iron Age and the Roman period, adult fractures were well set with few secondary changes. So in other words, they had a good knowledge of dealing with fractures in the Iron Age and the Roman period. So again, do you know what I said earlier on? It didn't really need the Romans to help us with our medicine. There we go. We didn't really need the Romans to help us with anything. So this is a really interesting point, which I'm sure you guys wouldn't think about, but there's no evidence for a difference in the way males and females were treated in regards to fractures and other ailments in both the Iron Age and the Roman period, which I think that's really interesting. Yeah. Evidence for surgery was, evidence of surgery. They've been looking at that. And
What about dentistry?
What's that?
Dentistry.
We do mention that in a short while. We do mention that. They've got evidence of they've got evidence in one case of examining a mother to try and save the mother's life after childbirth. So they've got evidence of examination and trying to save a mother. And I don't know how they're doing that in the archaeology, but they've got that far. So what they've got is that they've also realized that people in the Iron Age and the Roman period had a good idea how to deal with damage to limbs, for example, to make sure that they haven't got a permanent impairment. And then what I mean by that is that when you look at say the American Civil War, to try and save somebody's life, they would just cut your leg off. They wouldn't treat you. They would just cut your leg off, right? But in the Iron Age, for example, in the Roman period, there was a sense of trying to deal with people so that you haven't got a permanent ailment. Try to save the limbs rather than cut them off just like that, right? So this is the way they've been studying this stuff in Dorset, and they're actually starting to realize that there was a good education of medicine in the Iron Age and the Roman period, and there's also a clear indication that wounds healed, right? That means that there was a good level and understanding of sanitation. There was a good level of bacteria. There was a good level of curing people, so that they went on to live many years after treatment. So what we're going to do now, I just want to show you a few images to sort of illustrate this, and then what we then do, we go on to looking at something else linked to burials, which ties in with this and ties in with the previous topic of hierarchy. So what the hell's Roger doing? Right, so this is the Stanway enclosure, and this is rather interesting. This is based on a site known as Stanway, where they've tried to link a doctor's burial at Colchester, somebody who died roughly around the time the Iron Age, the Roman period. So somebody who's sort of running over into the Roman period from the Iron Age, and what they've got is this wonderful image here of this individual's burial, and they're saying that this person had a rational and ritualistic way of being a doctor, and they say they can understand that by when you say, for example, look at these rods here, look at the surgical instruments. Look at the fact that this individual was buried with a gaming board, and the individual was cremated, and the individual, this doctor, was actually buried with cups and platters, and was actually buried with a strainer and a saucepan. And this is the burial of a doctor, because we've actually got the surgical equipment buried with the individual. And this is what they're saying. They're saying that they've got a rational way of treating people because there's surgical instruments, and there's almost as if there's a ritualistic way of treating people. And as some of you know, right, that old adage, mind over matter. You can. Oh, this is quite dodgy. Me saying this. Sometimes you can cure things by thinking about it, right? And that's what we're saying with magic, right? I'm not saying for one moment you can cure cancer by thinking about it, but some people say you can. But I'm not in that school, and I'm not even going to advocate that. But the fact of the matter is, you've got rods and surgical instruments found with this burial, as well as a load of other paraphernalia. And what they're saying is that these burials are found within a landscape of other archaeology. Now, when we did our trip to Colchester, we went actually to the Gosbecks Park, and this would be very near this burial of Stanway. And what they're saying is that this ties us directly in with that sort of magical element, a dualistic way of being a doctor in the Iron Age, for example. And when we say a dualistic way of being a doctor in the Iron Age, these rods are organized into iron rods, brass rods, long rods, short rods. Very interesting that we've got those rods there. And my notes tell us that research has been undertaken into this burial, and the idea that doctors had a magical way of reacting to curing people, right? Both a medical doctor and a link with ritual and magic, and it's basically like when you go into an old doctor's office, and there'd be all sorts of weird things around, and like a skull with all the lines and stuff on it and weird things. So something like that, right? But the other image that we've got is this. These are the items that they actually found with the doctor, and it's quite a big set of surgical instruments, and I'm sure you'd all agree with that. It's quite a wide set of the rational set of medical instruments. So we've got bronze and we've got iron instruments there, and I'm actually surprised there's not something made of flint there. Which flint would be. We know that flint is today used for eye surgery, but that's not there anyway. But we've got scalpels made of iron. We've got an iron saw, okay, which has been broken into 4 pieces. Now, that's rather interesting. Yes, we do know that people in prehistory had saws, and we do know that people in this sort of Iron Age Roman period in Britain, that they had a saw. So the saw would naturally be an instrument used to cut through limbs, right? So a handle composed of iron with flanking places of wood, bone sandwiched between bronze outer plates. So there we go. We got a combined sharp and blunt hook. So we got these hooks which could be used for various things. We don't need to explain that. A retractor, is that used for a retractor, and forceps used for childbirth? Yeah. Force. The idea of using forceps for and so on. But that's something that was in medical practice for until, I don't know, the 1970s. My cousin Dawn, she was born using forceps. Unfortunately, it squashed her skull, and she eventually died. But these are medical instruments that were still very much being used up until they're probably still in the medical kit there as well. But we got them there. They're made of iron and bronze. Needles, a single piece instrument with stout handles. So obviously a needle for stitching wounds together. Various other needles there made of iron. A scoop probe. It'd be interesting to know that it says the scale of that is it says is that 13 centimeters long? So not great. You've got a handle of something and you've got a knife. So I wanted to bring you that to give you an idea of surgical stuff that was available that would have been seen in the late Iron Age into the Roman period. And again, medical practice was very much on the minds of people that were about in the Iron Age and then flowing into the Roman period. I know there's quite a lot in that, but I think the final thing I wanted to do tonight is take us to Kent, and this is known as Aylesford style pottery, and this is associated with graves, and this is associated with people of maybe higher birth because of the way and the goods that they were buried with. So what we're talking about in the years before the birth of Christ in Kent, you've got something known as the Aylesford culture, a group of a style that they're actually producing pottery and burials. Most of the cemeteries at this stage, like this, with goods like this and this, right? These cemeteries are relatively small, but there's lots to be said about these cemeteries. These cemeteries, all of those black things are cremations. Well, you can clearly say the inhumation ones there are the oblong, empty oblong things. So you've got lots of burials there, right? But these are small burial areas, which is really, really interesting there. Lots of people there. So even though these cemeteries are small, you do get a lot of these, and it's saying that the ashes themselves were usually placed in a variety of wheel-turned urns. And again, you're thinking about the period before the birth of Christ. You're thinking about the period 50, 60 years before the Roman invasion of Britain of AD 43. So often the burials were accompanied with additional pots. And as you can tell, there's quite a lot there. Now, to try and work out who's who, or if these were all part of just normal burial practice, is something quite clear, right? Everyone is being buried. And if that's David, I hope you're okay. Often the burials were accompanied by additional pots. It seems reasonable to assume that they once contained offerings of food and drink. Gallo-Roman brooches have been found in large numbers. For example, at this site, in 454 graves, inhumation and cremation burials, 222 of them, they found a brooch. So again, it's almost as if this was a society at the end of the Iron Age where people had a same level of respect when they passed and then they went into the afterlife. It might be that these represent family groupings. Aylesford cremations in wheel-made urns arrived in cemeteries can be seen influenced by styles of pottery coming over from northern France. This is classed. We don't usually use this term a lot in my classes. These are Latin burials, which is using this pottery and using this arrangement that is associated with a style coming over from Europe. And again, it's likely through trade and technology and ideas that this pottery is being used and being made here, influenced by that which is being made in Northern Europe. Among the Ellsworth cremations were some very richly endowed burials. And these ritually, so obviously we're talking about lots of these, 222 of these have been buried with a brooch, and you've got this beautiful pottery, right? But some of these, amongst these, for example, the ones with the square things, there's a few of them. The one on the left there, these bigger ones, right, are as follows. Now these are seen to be special people, okay? So these are classed as very, very, very unique and special types of burial. And what you can clearly see there is a nice array of Roman Samian ware platters in the lower part of the image, and lots of this is going to be sort of imported in from the continent. And we've got this. This is a burial of a man, and this is in a rectangular pit, 3 by 2 meters, and it's saying that this is a unique burial for one burial there, right? And then this is possibly, as you can see, in a family plot, right? So that would be classed as a family plot. These are all family plots, you see. And then everybody outside, they're probably family groupings and stuff, various cremations and so on. But only a few of these are inhumation. Only a few of these haven't been cremated. But again, it gives you an array of what people wanted in the Iron Age and what they felt the afterlife was all about. But then again, that's another topic altogether. And look at this. This is really unusual. This is actually from a site at Welwyn Garden. Okay. And I'm thinking that I've actually done a Welwyn Garden video as part of my daily Roman things. I think I have actually. I'm just going to double check Welwyn Garden. But this burial is, as you can see, really, 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 really interesting. It's overboard. And Welwyn Garden is 20 miles north of London. So we've gone from Kent and now we're in Welwyn Garden, a very, very similar style of burial. And you can clearly see in there, right? You can clearly see in there that in this one, right, in this pit, right, which is similar dimensions to the one that we've just seen previous, right? But look at that, and then you get to this in Welwyn Garden, and it's saying that in here you've got 36 pottery vessels, mostly imported, 5 Italian wine amphora. Look at them. A silver Roman drinking cup, and a bronze wine strainer, and 24 coloured glass gaming pieces. And the burial probably took place 15 years before the birth of Christ. Now, this is an outstanding burial. Are these the people that me and Anne were just sort of intimating at the end? Are these the people who started to think, right, actually, we're not part of that society the Iron Age was. We actually want to stand out above everybody else. And there's only one way that can actually happen. It happens because there's more people and people have got more wealthy. And as you know, when people get more wealthy, they get more greedier and they get more heirs and graces. And this is a burial of somebody who's been buried with a lot of heirs and graces. And what we actually start to see running up to AD 43 is we actually start to see, I'll just give you an example. That there's one example of somebody buried at Colchester, somebody buried with a shirt embroidered with gold threads. There's little iron boxes, there's chests, there's chainmail being buried with people, wine amphoras, silver medallions, all sorts of things. This is as societies starting to become more and more endowed with wealth. And when you get more and more endowed with wealth, that's when people move away from this stereotypical world that we've been talking about, hierarchy in the Iron Age. So people start to get more and more full of themselves, in other words, and you can actually see this in the burials. And finally, as we close today, the afterlife, the grave goods found in the late Iron Age burials indicate a strong preoccupation with the afterlife as well. So it's not just these people having airs and graces at the end of the Iron Age in Britain, it's that they've got a strong belief in the afterlife. Great care was taken to proportion goods in order to secure a safe entry to the next world. And this was made easier by this new thing that we're talking about, this new thing of religion. One thing that we haven't talked about in most of the Iron Age stuff, we haven't mentioned religion at all, right? And now the Romans are actually starting to write about this thing known as Druids. And they're starting to talk about Didorius Siculus writing about 8 BC records that the Druids, this is on the continent, stab a man in the region of the midriff and foretell the future by the convulsions of his limbs and the pouring of his blood. And that's when things start to get very interesting. But that is for another day. And very interesting. Let's see if somebody else is going to live by killing somebody, and then we can read out what's going to happen in their lives. That's really screwed up, I got to be honest with you. But on that note, we've gone off on something totally different. We're going to call that a day. Right, this is the aim of starting earlier, and it's 9:34, so we've sort of done it. Hopefully we've done quite a bit of stuff there. I just wanted to say something as well that occurred to me the other day, right? And this is an age-old question, right? And nobody spotted it when we did it, right? And I'm sounding very sort of tongue all over the place there. When we were looking at, for example, the Neolithic period, we would talk about what happened to the trees, and then we come to the conclusion that it's impossible for these trees to be felled in the way that it wasn't mass annihilation by humans wiping out these trees. We may have mentioned disease. We may have mentioned like Dutch elm diseases happening in the Neolithic period. But one thing that we didn't mention is storm damage, right? I'm reminded that in the Great Storm, was it in 1988? We lost somewhere in the region in Britain of 23 million trees, right? And an agriculturalist told me that he went through a woodland in Britain and all the trees were flattened on the ground, right? And just think, could that have happened in the Neolithic period as well, where some storms were so ferocious that it just blew the trees over, right? And that might be one reason why suddenly 1 minute Britain is full of trees and the next minute we get these storms that change our environmental landscape of Britain forever. And remember, this is an important point. Britain is an island now. Back in the Neolithic, back before the Neolithic period, back at the time of Doggerland, back all the way back 8,000 years ago, Britain was an island, right? And you're thinking the trees have got protection, but when Britain is surrounded by, for example, water, and surrounded by various wind channels, right, it's quite possible you're going to lose lots of the trees, right? And I just thought I would chuck that in there with you, and that is it. If there's any questions from anybody, let's just let's see, guys, if there's any questions from Andy.
No. Rog mentioned something about dental stuff, and I seem to remember that there was that wax filling, wasn't there? In that, it wasn't that Iron Age.
Hang on a minute. We
did it a while ago on some as part of another lecture, but it was like beeswax in a tooth, wasn't there?
Iron. Hang on a minute. I thought we had something on here about dentistry, but Iron Age, dentistry. Right. Okay. Let's see if I can look at that a moment. Right. So Iron Age dentistry. Iron Age dentistry. Yes, we do. We have. Here's an example. Involve the use of implants and other methods to replace or improve teeth. Implants.
Wow.
Right. Actually, do you want me to show you an image of an implant in the Iron Age? Let's just do it. I've got it here. I can't just. We've got AI helping me now, Andy. We've been using that a fair bit recently.
I thought you said you lived on your own.
AI. She helps me a bit. AI. You know,
AI.
AI. Why, man? No, I was just going to type. Right, I typed in Iron Age dentistry, and there's actually an image here. Iron Age dentistry, right? So you type in AI there, right, and look at that there.
Wow.
Oh gosh.
My goodness. How did they do that?
Wow.
Well,
So basically, you're drilling through the two that are
loose.
you drilled. So when it says iron pins, it says iron pins were used as implants in the Iron Age, but this is tying together. It says, for example, a young woman in France was buried with an iron pin in place of an upper incisor. What?
Right.
The pin was.
That's kind of a bridge, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's talking about this girl again. The pin
the
was
Romans had
likely
false
covered.
teeth, didn't they? They could put a plate in.
Yeah, the pin was likely covered with a tooth made of wood or ivory. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is amazing.
Teeth from dead people. Maybe.
Teeth from dead people. It says your gold teeth. The Etruscan elite of the Iron Age admired gold teeth. They may have used gold teeth to replace lost, broken, or decayed teeth, or to distinguish themselves from lower social classes.
Wow. That one looks like they may have been knocked out and they've been put back in.
I tell you what, that is something special. That is. It's talking about tooth tartar. Analysis of tooth tartar can provide information about diet, oral hygiene, and dentistry practices. For example, researchers have been able to identify food proteins from ancient tooth tartar, including evidence of dairy products.
Right.
Yeah, clever.
Wow. I tell you, I'm glad, Andy, you mentioned that. That's really good. I think that is clever. That is. I tell you what, right? I'm gonna get that done.
Right.
I tell you when I'm rich and famous, right? I'm gonna get somebody to get some gold wire, right? A dentist will go to Turkey, right, and we'll get that done.
Jolly good.
We're ready to look at your smile.
Yeah.
No,
I know. How would it work with your chewing, though? You see that? If you bite onto that would move, probably, wouldn't it?
Oh, Andy, stop putting things in a way.
Oh, hang
on a minute. Yeah, you were right about that. If those teeth matched really well, it must have been the teeth that they'd
Yeah.
fallen out.
Yeah, or knocked out. Yeah.
Yeah, could
Oh,
be.
well. Tooth collecting people. Anything else from you, Roger? And we'll ask Davey.
No,
I was going to say about childbirth and all that type of thing, the complications there with the forceps, yes. Because Jill had trouble as a baby and damaged their head, which repaired okay. But it was quite risky, very risky with the makeup and the birth. But of course, another big problem I'm aware of from our family things is one is lack of afterbirth being ejected and hemorrhage. Now, hemorrhage be deadly. There was a case, that's a sort of makeshift thing in India, I think. A woman had had the child, but then the bleeding was going nuts. So they wrapped up a rag in iodine to put into the womb onto the area to cure it, and it worked. But I mean, with the right conditions, but it's a very simple thing rather than fancy operations and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of women died through that, as well as fevers, puerperal fevers. Like the Somalis now are not using clean hands, and the mothers are ending up with lockjaw. Even now.
The thing is, I was with one of my lambs being delivered last year, right? It was like it got to this point after an hour and a half. I thought I can't allow, because I'd done lambing courses, but I thought this isn't any of this. I tried everything. I thought, right, I've just got to go in there now, and I've just got to yank this lamb out now. I've got to just do it, because the mother's going to die, the lamb's got to die. I've just got to do it, right? And there was a lot of blood, but I just thought this needed to be done.
And the other case on the radio country part or something, they had two people having to deal with it because of the tangle of the legs.
Yes.
So, I think it was a cow, was it? I think, but it was getting so tangled up and real puzzle as how to keep them together, and not damage the whole area there, sort of to cause more bleeding and ever. And it worked.
Exactly.
The mother was very distressed, but with proper care and quiet and all that, the farmer kept her and the calf. But it's very difficult. And the thing with what I might have missed is the occurrence of bacteria. There was a thing called puerperal fever, for instance.
Yeah.
There was other stuff that could infect because people were not aware. You mentioned bacteria, but they weren't quite aware of how it all worked to cause these things, rather than some magical thing or bad luck or something. It's sort of an unknown thing. So it's an interesting thing. You can't tell, but how many births were successful, because that was the problem. Keeping in mind that was probably the mother was laid out on just a ordinary bed or something for the delivery, and you think, well, blimey, no one's cleaned anything, and these days it's make a big, almost a joke now, of got the scissors and all the rest of it, which you don't need. But in those days, talk about a risk. You know what I mean? It's phenomenal. And you think, well, was there any way of stemming any hemorrhaging? Very often, guys in battle, it's been shown on film, they get cut. They can't stop the bleeding.
No, they can't.
They gradually die.
The thing is, Roger, as
a problem, hemorrhaging.
Having to be in a field with mud and straw and having to do what I needed to do, right? You don't think about hygiene. You just got to get it done. You think about hygiene afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for that, Roger. Anything you want to say, David?
No, thank you.
Okay. Right, who's next? Drina?
No, nothing, thank you.
Okay, Judith? No,
No,
Judith?
nothing, thank you.
Okay. Margaret?
Well, do you think that diseases and infections influence the idea of moving into smaller family units rather than communal living? Around about
yeah, it's that's a difficult one. People would have just continued doing what they needed to do to survive. It's more about that rather than thinking about small or big groups. If a small group worked, then it did. If a big group worked, it did. That's basically the situation.
Whatever you could do at the time.
But a large
Whatever you could do at the time, whatever was socially available for you to do at the time, yeah.
But a large community could be very quickly wiped out just by influenza, couldn't they?
But
Yeah.
probably
Yeah,
with other diseases
exactly,
generally.
exactly.
But they were still doing that in Victorian times, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, in Victorian times, people had
Another problem with COVID.
Had 8 or 9 children.
Plagues.
Mm.
They still could have other massive, plagues. No. We had a taste with COVID, and that shook us badly. And it's always the case that's there. Possibly it can happen. So difficult.
That's true. Okay. I put my other thing on just in case. I might lose my thing soon. So. Right, go. Who's next?
Anne.
Yeah, me. In part of it, you were saying that the one of the medical processes or ideas they had was you could get better just by thinking about it, which seemed stupid. But the placebo effect, which we even still believe in today,
yes,
almost backs that up, doesn't it? You know, that could have been something that would work if you just convince people, and get a positive attitude. It might have worked.
Well, we never know, do we? Because we go to the doctor to get better, and he always makes us better. So,
yes. But what I'm saying is, if they believed that, you could get better by thinking about it, the placebo effect just does that, doesn't it? You're taking something, you believe it's something when it isn't.
Yeah.
But you can get better by it. So almost what happens today, it was sensible in their time, in a sense.
Definitely. Yeah.
De-stressing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And whether hypnotism is vaguely linked to sort of control of the mind thing, but that's another thing. Where the mind comes into.
Good night, all.
Bye, David.
Good night, David. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Take care, you.
I can't do it to get off. No, really.
Did Abraham Lincoln have wooden teeth?
What?
Ooh,
Abraham Lincoln, did he have wooden teeth?
That rings a bell, actually.
I think he did.
Is that why he got shot? I can't remember. There was something about that.
I'm sure Abraham Lincoln had
George Washington.
Teeth. Or was it Washington? Oh, it was one of the presidents.
One of them, yeah.
Wow.
Good night.
Yeah.
Good night, Anne.
No.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to. Bye.
Yes, me too. Yeah.
Bye.
Good night.
Yeah.
Are you having problems, Carl? We can't hear you. Okay. Yeah, we can't hear you. We just We will say good night then in that case. If somebody else has got anything else to say.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Bye all. See you next week. Bye.
Okay.
Anyone watching, don't forget, I had a problem with my my speaker then. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't know how that is. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and hopefully see you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, or Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Anyway, thank you for that, and we'll be back on tomorrow. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Night night.